conditionally match again in the pack layer on the route filters here, because different types of Windows events are going to match different types of filters that you see here. So the first example might be something like Windows Classic Events. It's going to call this Windows Classic Event Pipeline. So I'm going to go into the Windows Classic Event Pipeline, and I'll move this over so you can see everything. And I have a lot of comments. And what I've done is I learned a lot since I joined about Windows Classic Events. It's very difficult. I mean, there's a lot of embedded things in this. There could be embedded XML inside Classic Event format. There can be full-on embedded code, PowerShell scripts, and things like that. So after a lot of working with these events and getting used to them, the goal of this pack was I do a lot of masking. I'm going to basically go through and prepare the event by replacing things with our mask function and turn it into a JSON format. And that's what we have here in these various functions that you see here. These are groups. You can group things within Logstream. And then I finish with some final cleanup. So let's take a look. So this is how the event looks coming in. And what I'm going to do is click on the out. And so the event is transformed from a classic format to JSON. And because this is Logstream, you can choose to do anything you want with it. You could serialize it into other formats. You could go into a key value format and so on and so forth. But so classic events, it does take a lot of work to get it to this shape. But for other routes within this pack, like Windows XML events, you can see it doesn't require much. Built into Logstream, and this is XML, not meant for human or computers to really read. We have a function, ctext parse when event. We also have ctext parse XML if it's not Windows. We separated them because Windows events have certain attributes that we needed to preserve. This function here says parse raw, turn it into JSON, but for any keys that contain these values, make them go away. So the out with a single function converts it to JSON and removes any values of 0 by 0 or dash. If you took this out of here and just left the brackets, then it would just not remove any values from this. You just simply make it go away, hit save, and then if there were any values, you literally would see them right here like that. And that just, there's no value to this. It adds to your ingest costs and your storage costs. So you can pick and choose what values you get and which ones you discard. And so that's how we handle XML. And for those customers that are using things like NXLog was new to me. And I did a lot more masking, as you see. I have to add more comments to this one. But again, you can see it. It looks much like syslog has a priority field here, and that's what it looks like. And the customer said, I would like it to be JSON. So again, using the powerful mask functions and regexing and things like that, we've converted that event into JSON.
Hey, Dave, before you keep going there, just a quick question. Can you talk about the benefits of transferring classic format to JSON, what that helps, what that means?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So when you start with a classic event structure like this, you have your key equals value, and then further down in the message, you end up with key colon values. And this is a very large event. And so by converting things into a clean, structured format like this, you get the benefits of a huge reduction from the original classic format. You can choose to keep or not keep like a lot of bloated message text. Those are options that I have within the pipeline. But reduction is key. And the other thing is the destination. If it's landing in Splunk, then there is a Windows TA that expects the event in a certain format. And it would not work with JSON out of the box. In fact, what I recommend is when you send JSON into Splunk, it will automatically recognize the fields that you've created within this JSON object. And if you try to use the existing Windows TA, it will fail and you'll be very confused and frustrated. So what I tell customers is, listen, the goal here was massive reduction, because when you have less events going from the original source into this destination, you have obviously have less ingest costs, less license, you have less storage, you have faster performance. But the flip side of that is, hey, my dashboard didn't work because some field is no longer like camel case log name. Instead, it's now looks like this. Maybe, there's another field that is missing or something, or not aliased correctly. And what I say to people is, let Splunk do what it does very well for this new modern approach to receive JSON, automatically parse the fields. We have KV mode in Splunk would use equals JSON, will automatically parse the keys and values for you when you receive the event without having to do pipe it through SPath. And if you're missing fields within Logstream, you could rename them to the base field name that it's expecting. That would be one approach. Another approach could be search time aliasing. So your TA that is normally the existing TA is 2000 props.conf lines long and transforms as another giant file to manually edit config files. That's not fun. I say pass the events in as JSON to the destination, then create a very small TA with any remaining aliases on the Splunk side, and perhaps lookup tables. You could do lookups inside the pipeline here, but that's going to make your event grow big again. And a lot of times, unless there's an absolute need for enrichment in the stream, you could leave that for search time, because then you won't have to worry about adding to your license or your storage costs. It would just be a search time lookup. It would be a search time field alias. It'll be aligned with the common information model once you set up the proper aliasing, as long as your dashboards work. Does that answer your question, Shane?
It does. And we just got a live question as well. Do you have thoughts on if you'd recommend XML or Windows Classic logging? Either way, recommendation there.
Yeah, I mean, XML is better. I mean, let's be honest here. When you're dealing with, whether it's regular expression, even on XML, or you're dealing with regular expression or masking against Classic, Classic's a pretty ugly format. XML is easy, and we have a single function that converts it from XML to JSON. It's always going to work. There are instances, even as of today, like I wrote the pack, I published it, and 5 minutes later, I got a feedback from one customer who says, hey, these fields are missing. And it really boiled down to the fact that in his message, there were keys that were like sentences. There was like 6 words with spaces between them that I didn't account for. So sometimes you have to make minor adjustments to like the Classic structure. But when we finish today's presentation, I will be talking about the Windows Event Collector and Windows Event Forwarding support, because that also natively uses XML, which again, I would recommend. When you see the difference between this with 31 functions to the XML pipeline with a single function, you kind of get why I would recommend XML if you can at all have some say as far as the format or the output that Windows provides. Does that answer your question in the audience?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, where is that little chat bubble? Let me bring it up here. Here we go.
Yeah, you'll see a few comments there on the chat. Ed streamed that one in from LinkedIn. Somebody's watching live.
Okay, yeah, just remind me in case I miss anything. Okay, so continuing on with the other things we've added is there's DNS, and I think Brendan's on, he helped me with this one. So with DNS events, you have some interesting things here, like this is basically the number of characters that follow 4 Corp, 5 Acme 1. And that's
hey, David, can we zoom in one level? It's pretty
absolutely
small. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Awesome.
All right. So here you can see, an 11 followed by 11 characters, 4. And so we handled that basically using the mask function to replace those extra characters that are just not needed. Then we do various extractions and eval, and then you can do suppression based on maybe like a tuplet or something like that. So here, the event came in looking like this. The event goes out like this with all the fields extracted. And again, my goal, I can't possibly speak for the world as far as whether it's security use cases. Yeah, I can get the events into a native format. And in this case, if I wanted to, I could simply add something like a serialize command at the bottom of this and say, you know what I want to do? I want to serialize all those top level fields. So basically all of these minus the Cribl and the time. So I could simply say like not _*, because you always do your negatives first, not Cribl star. Oops, let's do that right. Add the little wildcard there, sorry. And then everything else should go into raw. So I'll just put a wildcard. So I did my denies, then I do my allows, and I hit save. And then you'll see that the event is now transformed into a nice, easy to read, clean event. And the event, because the raw length has gone up, it's very different than it used to look. That can add to your size. You could choose to change things like move it to key value if that's your thing. Tstats in Splunk now supports the prefix option, so you can actually do tstat searches against raw. And again, it will also grow because this event was not, this size. So I chose not to use serialize for this type of event and leave it as is with minor masking done to it so that it's nice and clean and also does give you a 10% savings of the event. You can pick and choose what fields you want it to place back in there or how you want to finish the event. And the other thing I think about when it comes to like Windows events, when I get the data in its final format or shape, like you see here, there are, the next steps, which is why I have these as learning sections, where the customers can choose to drop events. And this is where you see volume reduction versus just reducing the size of the events, which we already saw. I've seen when I turn on some of these, functions like sampling, suppression, dynamic sampling, or even aggregation or conversion to metrics, like for perfmon data, I could get up to, 80, 90% reduction in the event sizes if I choose to do that. So I left this in here just as examples where you can try these things on your own to decide what works for you. I have another customer whose security team says, you know what, we can add a drop function for a whole list of event codes. Once you got it to this shape, it's a lot easier. You could do something like an eval. Oops. Sorry, I meant a drop, my fault. Let's do that again. And you could have a filter that says, all right, there's an array of event codes. So you know what I want to do is for this field, I'll just double click it, that copies it to the clipboard. And I could say like, for, I don't know, what's the codes here? Let's go with 4688, and then just do a comma delimited array right here, 4689, whatever it's going to be, dot includes. It's kind of backwards from what a lot of people do. And then you paste the field name right there. And then that would in fact apply to the event and drop those events that have that specific event code. So it's a nice cleaner way to represent what you're trying to get rid of in the filter using drop, which, customers go crazy on this. Does that make sense? All right, let's continue on. And the last one I did yesterday for data routes, I'll leave this section. Am I in the right place? I left my pack, of course I did. Let's go back here. Is the perfmon. So perfmon, a very simple pipeline. What I did here, let's go into the events. This is what they look like. So I'm going to turn these off and step through this because I think it's kind of clever. So first thing is we support, this is similar to what Splunk would do, is you can use a regex with this type of format, key, 0 or 1, and a value, and it will extract. What I'm looking for is collection equals processor, these into the key and the value name. So if I hit save here on just the regex, the first thing you'll see is category collection and object got extracted into fields below. Then I wanted to do something clever and also show off our new event breaker function that was added recently. So the next thing I'm going to do is mask, and mask is clever. So what I said is from the top down, there's going to be 4 repetitions of this. Just get rid of all of that from the raw event, because now you're going to be left with the header. There you go. So now you have the header and you have the values below the columns. This is where event breaker comes in really handy as a function now, because yeah, you might have done some event breaking, but now what I'm doing is some further event breaking to clean this up. This is header-based data, file header. The header begins with instance. It's tab delimited. And I'm basically saying the fields, all the values below is pretty much the entire line. So if I turn this on, what you're going to notice is a couple things. We have 487 events. I'm going to hit save. And you're going to see that this event, the header will go away. All the fields will be extracted based on the column header and then exploded into separate events using the event breaker function. So now you can see how nice this can be for anything, you know, top, PS, any header-based IIS, I think are header-based logs, yeah, things like that. And then I said, you know what, there's a lot of numbers here. And I think about, you know, potentially if I convert these to numbers, I could do other things like aggregation, convert these things into metrics and do dimensions and, you know, split them. So I included examples again that says, you know what, you can drop things when page writes is equal to 0, because why would you care to keep things that basically don't do anything? I could suppress things. Oops, let's make that go here. Based on, you know, time, every 120 seconds, host an instance. I could sample things like when these are equal to 0, I don't really care. I'll just take 1 out of every 250 events, like a heartbeat event. And then aggregation. For those that haven't played with this function, it's really great, because if you're used to the stats command in Splunk, then you should get very familiar with the capabilities of the aggregation, because what I can choose to do is give my statistics here, group by whatever dimensions that I want here, set a new index because I want to send this into a metrics index, pick the time window settings, and one of the favorite pieces of this is this. I want to just convert these events into metrics and send them onto a Splunk metric events, because the giant event that I originally received, if I could shrink it down, I'm going to pay basically 150 bytes per metric event. I'm going to turn off the show drop field so you can see this. And now we see a metric event. A little m there. We see the host is your dimension, the instance is dimension. This is your metric and your value. And that can go to Splunk as a metric. But sometimes you may say, but I need both. I want the metrics, but I also want to pass through the events as is. So when you do that, you'll see that the events are still here with all of the fields extracted for you to choose what to do with. And then I'll grab my little cursor, go way down to the bottom. That's why I hid the drop fields here. And there's your metric events at the end. Oops, I guess I scrolled up by accident. So that's what you see down here, the metric events. So you get the best of both worlds. So you can take your raw events, you can sample, you can suppress. I'll turn off the pass-through mode. And my favorite thing is, again, I love volume reduction within an event, but when I can achieve a 99.99% reduction using metrics and aggregation, that's a powerful statement. Are there any questions that I should pay attention to for the chat room, because there's a lot going on there? Shane, anyone?
I think we're good right now. If anybody wants to
Perfect.
ask a question, please jump in or put it in the chat and we'll make sure we get it addressed.
Okay. So that's the demo of the latest Windows pack. But here's the thing, and this is what I've noticed, is I put this pack out there, customers were updating the pack, and they're like, hey, I don't see anything. I don't see any changes. But yet I know you updated the pack, but I updated my pack and I don't see them. And if you're used to the concept of like order of precedence, the way Splunk did it, you know, with default and local, we follow the same guidelines in a smaller fashion. Like we have default and local, but we don't have like the context of app local. We don't have user local. We have default and local, and that's how our product works. So if you were to update your route or you updated a pipeline, then it's creating a local copy which overrides default, and you won't see them. So what I'm going to do now is go back over to the PowerPoint, and we're going to go through a presentation that hopefully helps you explain some of the nuances of packs. Okay. So again, packs are great. I use them all the time. When customers say, help me with X, Y, and Z, or I find an issue, I can do everything in a pack, export the pack and give it to my dev team or give it to a customer who says, can you solve a problem for me? So packs are not just something we create at Cribl. They're packs, you can create them just by using Logstream and going under the packs section and adding a new pack for anything that you want to do. You can publish them to your own repository. You can also contribute to our packs. You can actually check out branches. You can add comments. You could submit PRs. You can say, hey, there's something wrong with your pack right on our GitHub repo. So again, a pack packs up everything that you're doing within Logstream, except for like sources and destinations, that's to come, and sends data from the regular routes into the pack, where your pack routes, filters, and pipelines do the work against the event. And when it's done processing the event, it goes back out to the system route where it goes to its intended destinations. There's some differences, as I said. Logstream routes call packs. Packs have everything that's between a source and a destination. That includes your lookup tables, parsers, global variables, groks, schemas, things like that, sample data files, even custom functions. But what's not in a pack, at least as of today, but coming soon, packs can't specify a destination, packs can't specify a source, and you can't use the source event breakers. You can use the event breaker function, but not the original source breaker that's attached to the source. Other things that are not supported, of course, are collectors. You can get packs right from the github.com/Cribl packs, but there are other customers that have been writing packs for Tanium, for Azure, Office Activity, and so on that you see below. I'm sure there's going to be a recording of this, so you can feel free to go to those URLs at your leisure. Benefits to packs are great. They're pre-built knowledge content, gives you fast time to value. You can demonstrate things quickly to your teams, to your managers about how flexible it is to take ownership of events that previously was kind of hard. When we get data in, that was a big thing in Splunk. It was easy to get data in, but after that, you had no visibility into the events that were coming in, whether they changed, or whether you had to update them. And it created a lot of work. There was the deployment server to manage the forwarders, the TAs themselves got out of date. So as you know, I don't have to sell you on Logstream. We make things a lot easier to give you that ownership of the events as they pass through the stream. So a pack, when you look inside it, if you were to open up a pack, it is just a tar gzip, so you can just untar them and ungzip them. Tar is ZXVF. You can expand them, and you're going to see that there's going to be a data folder in there. And this is important to pay attention here, because in the pack there are lookup tables, there are sample datas, and those don't have the concept of default and local, which I'll talk about in a moment. The default directory is going to contain all your YAML files, your pipelines that have a route.yaml file. There's only one of those. And every pipeline contains things like conf.yaml per pipeline, schemas, functions, and so on. And so when you add to a pack, like your new lookup table, your new pipeline, your new whatever route, they will be preserved on an update. But if you were, I told you earlier, there's no default and local for the data directory, like a lookup table. If you were to just update the lookup table that's shipped with the pack and you updated the pack, it might overwrite that lookup table. So be careful there and read that README file that's in the pack settings so you can understand what things are out there. And I'm going to talk about how to get around these types of challenges. So again, there's no concept of local in the data directory in a pack. When there is local, like for pipelines and for routes and things like that, local will always win over default. So when I send you my pack update and you've made changes to the pipeline, you're like, where is it? I don't see anything, because the easy way to see it would be to import the pack with a new ID. Just change the name of the pack. Or even when you start off using a pack, I like to import the pack with its original name and call it, that's my template. But if I'm going to use the pack, I might make a new copy of that pack, import it under a different ID, and use that for all my updates and changes. So that way, when you just update the default pack, you will see those changes, and you can choose what cool new features to migrate over to your pack or not. When you export a pack, there's a merge option, and you can, what basically that means is if you love your pack, you've built your own pack, and you've added a lot of things that are in local, when you choose to merge when you export it, then it's going to merge all of those into the default folder, so that when you send your pack to other people, they're going to receive all of those changes out of the box. There's a lot of YAML files. This deck covers that. And again, I can include this deck as part of the shared video for this so that way you don't have to just look at the video. Again, as I said, we have published packs, and then there are plenty of unpublished packs, mainly because of time and resources, and maybe it's the lack of available sample data. And we wrote a pack to test something, but we never published it. It's always good to say, hey, I'm working on something, VPC flow logs for AWS, and save yourself some time. First, look in Cribl packs and see if it's there. If it's not there, go to our community and ask. You want to be able to make sure that you can, not have to do redundant work that other people might have already done. You can export packs to files, and you can also, within a distributed log stream environment, export packs to other worker groups right from the UI. Now we're going to talk about some of those caveats that I mentioned in the beginning of this. So when a pack ships, as I said, it includes everything in the default folder. So when you try to delete them, like knowledge objects, sample data, lookup tables, you'll hit delete, they'll disappear from the UI. Then later on, you'll reload the UI and you'll be like, hey, wait a minute, they didn't actually delete. Right, because they're defaults. So the key thing to think about is if you really want to remove defaults out of the pack, you can just untar the pack, and I give instructions on how to do that. Clean up the pack, remove any sample data or other things you don't want in the pack anymore, tar it back up again, and then you can import your pack and you won't see those files anymore. This is another one that I think is very important, and I think Michael Donnelly's on as well. So Michael created the syslog pack, and Brendan created the Palo Alto pack. Inside those packs, there are lookup tables. If you were to then spend some time and say, this lookup table is great because when I get data based on my entire host list, I'm going to update this wonderful lookup table, and it has all the indexes and source types and sources all aligned perfectly. And then you go to update the pack, your lookup table will get blown away. So that is very important that you know that. So the best thing to do is create a new knowledge object. And an even better thing is, again, don't just update the pack that you're working on. Update the pack that you imported as a default and look at the new changes to that pack, and then update your pack. You can manually merge them and reconcile them or not, but it's things to be aware of. There are other times when customers said, I updated your Windows pack, but I don't see any changes at all. I don't get it. The routes look the same, the pipelines look the same. And again, your local changes overrode that in the UI. You're not going to see them. So yeah, you could choose to delete the pipeline that you're in that pack and restart the leader, and you would see, based on caching of the browser, those changes. But I did include, other approaches that you should probably take so that you would just install the pack in its default location and not overwrite your pack. Import a pack under a different name. And again, restarting the leader. This one I'm going to come back to in a moment. But again, the best practice, import the pack with a new ID. Each time you install a pack update and review the changes. And then you can merge your local changes from older packs to the newer pack. Now, there is only one routes.yaml file, and you can't actually delete that. It's kind of there. If you made changes to it, there's a local routes.yaml file, but that can be also challenging. If routes were added to the pack, you're not going to see them. So again, you could choose to delete the pack and import a new one. But if you made changes to it, then you don't want to lose those changes. And the other thing to think about is if Cribl Cloud. Cribl Cloud, under the normal on-prem instance of Logstream, there's the settings, controls, and you can just do a restart of the leader. But in Cribl Cloud, that option isn't available. So you can go under the API settings and you can use the restart in the API to restart there. So a long time ago, when we first introduced packs, several members of our team, Brendan, myself, John Rust, we put together some pretty interesting techniques, and we made a pack out of it called the Cribl Knowledge Pack. And once in a while, when we find new, really amazing things, custom functions, or really cool pipelines or ways to use specific evals or whatever, we just add them to this pack. So it's a great pack to download and review for your own learning. Again, more references to our docs and to the dispensary. Let's go through, and feel free to post your answers in the chat. Which answers are not a benefit of packs? Anyone going to post the chat? If not, I'll just continue. C, adding custom sources and destinations. C and E, I like this. Now we've got a lot of answers, C and E. Okay, let's take a look at the answer. C and E, Holly wins the prize. The next one, what is stored in the pack data directory? Pipeline definitions and the route YAML file, samples and lookup definitions, lookups and pipeline definitions, or samples and lookup files? Well, the answer is D. The data directory contains sample and lookup files. Which is true of the pack default directory? Default pipeline modifications are overwritten on pack updates. Default lookup tables are preserved on pack updates. The default directory always takes precedence over the local directory, or all routes and pipelines of the imported packs are contained in this directory. I did chuckle. And the answer is D. Let's keep going. Which of the following statements is true? Changes to packs will create a new default directory. The local data directory is where sample pack data captures and lookups are stored. Custom functions can be added to packs, or exporting packs with merge allows you to review each change before the export. And the answer is C. A lot of you got it right. Very good. Which YAML file is located in a pack? I know that I went through that slide earlier very quickly, but some of you have dug deep in our product before. Anyone? And I see a lot of correct answers piling in. D, absolutely right. conf.yaml. Who can create packs? SEs, customers, partners, or all of the above? Correct. Everybody's saying all of the above. Can packs contain sensitive data? Correct. Be careful. I mean, I really spend a lot of time because I get a lot of customer sample data. A lot of times they don't have time to use hygiene and clean them up. They'll send me samples and I want to build a pack on it. But I have to really watch that in my samples, because when I export that pack, what I don't want to do is export one of my customers' events. So I clean my sample data on purpose to make sure it doesn't ship. So yes, so can packs contain sensitive data? Sometimes they can. How do you restart a Cribl Cloud Leader? That one is something I talked about briefly. And yes, you are correct. If you modify a default pack lookup table, when you update the pack, the changes are merged. A local copy is preserved when updating the pack, or it is going to be overwritten when the pack is updated. Shane for the win. Correct.
I just took that from Holly, so thank you, Holly.
To review a pack update and not lose changes, you can import the pack and give it a new pack ID. Import the pack with the same ID and select merge. Import the pack to a different worker group. Delete your pack and import the update as all changes are preserved. A and C. All right, we're about ready to finish up with this last and exciting slide. Many customers have asked for this. It's really important because the Windows event collector, it's built into Windows. It is agentless. You can configure Windows to output events to a Windows event collector. The problem, the challenge with that is, in green, I have this highlighted, 100,000 endpoints as an example with an existing customer of ours that we're testing this with. needed 40 WEC servers because the registry itself would fill up based on how many events were coming into it. We can handle 100,000 endpoints easily with a single worker process, a single core. The initial release will support 25,000 events per second, 50 megabytes per second. The future release after that, you should expect around 75,000 events per second, about 100, 150 megabytes per second. Anson Van Doren, he's in our Slack community watching. I've created a Slack channel in community for WEC. You can actually find it in the community for this very purpose, for, if you have any questions about it. But the nice thing about it is, I'm a big advocate for, the nice XML output is the WEC will output XML, which, as you saw, we can convert it to anything, JSON, key value, or other formats. It today supports MTLS. Kerberos will be coming in the future, but not in this next release. It is something we're adding as a new source in Logstream 3.4.0. Now, WEC could be push, WEC could be pull, but this is a push model, meaning we're going to get events pushed to us. We're not going to do like a WMI query or a WEC query, because that's very chatty. So if the WEC, the way we support it as a source is a push source. This is, for those that use Kinesis, this is one of the sources that does keep state via the leader and of the bookmarks. Like, I have collected that shard. I have collected that information from the WEF, and I know my state, and that is managed on the leader node. So that's a very nice feature that is available on things like Kinesis and also now WEC. And that is what the new add-on for WEC, more to come because the docs are being completed. And again, this will be in the 3.4 release, slated, I can't guarantee it, but for around March 22nd. So very soon. And I think that's it. So that is my presentation for today. What I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen now, and perhaps we can open it up for any questions that you might have. Okay. Well, if there are no questions, then thank you very much for joining our call today. You can find me on our community Slack, as you guessed, as David at Cribl.io, David. And I look forward to helping you with your Windows challenges. And if, again, you see any challenges, reach out to me directly and say, hey, this pack doesn't do X, Y, and Z. I'm happy to enhance the pack all the time.
Thanks, David. We've got Brendan up in 2 weeks' time on the 23rd with a topic around repaving, rehydrating environments. So designing the leader node for deployment in rehydration and repaving environments. So that's going to be an interesting one. So we'll get that set up shortly, but appreciate everybody's time today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.